the Team Performance Podcast with Spencer Horn and Christian Napier. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Team Performance Winning Ways for Uncertain Times podcast. I'm Christian Napier in this beautiful new year of 2021, joined by the effervescently dressed, bubbly shirt, Spencer Horn. Spencer, how are you?
I'm great, Christian. How are you?
Man, I'm doing pretty good now that we're having a conversation.
Yeah, this could be bubbles, in your drink.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. And you've got
in your La Croix pamplemousse essence water.
Well, you've got this nice lighting behind you, so yes, you look very, very effervescent.
I'm trying to match the blue. And today, by the way, you're supposed to wear blue because it's the awareness for victims of sex trafficking, and so wearing blue on the 11th of January to show you are against that and support those victims.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I did not know that was today, so I appreciate you making us all aware. Well, we're recording this on a Monday. It is Monday, right?
Yeah, it is Monday, and yeah, I know this because tomorrow's Tuesday.
Oh, well, very, very smartly deduced there, Mr. Horn.
Well, it's also my birthday, so I am aware.
It's your birthday today?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow's your birthday.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Tomorrow's your birthday. So that's fantastic. What are you going to do for your birthday? Anything exciting?
Well, thank you. Yeah. So I've actually had most of the celebration. I took my wife, Jen, and I took my sons on Saturday to Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. We love Ruth's Chris. They have a process of cooking their steaks where they just put salt and pepper, and then they have this like 1600 degree oven that heats it from both sides. And then they put it on this super hot plate of just melted butter that is just unbelievable. And so we usually get, what's that? I don't know why I'm blanking out, but it's that porterhouse. Have you had a porterhouse steak before?
I have.
So
I'm more of a filet mignon guy.
But so it has filet, right? So we got two porterhouse steaks, and so on one side
is the filet.
Filet, and the other side is New York.
Yep.
So we got two of those, and they bring them, sliced up, and it's just they take them off the bone and they rub it on your plate with the butter, and oh my gosh, Christian, it's just amazing. So we did that, and then yesterday we had some family. Some of my kids came over, and my wife Jana made homemade chicken enchiladas and fudge brownies, and then I don't know what we'll do tomorrow. It's pretty much been done, but we may just have some ice cream or something, maybe some candles and cake.
That sounds awesome. Well, the nice thing about the Ruth's Chris plate is it keeps the food warm throughout the meal.
Yeah, and it's seriously one of our favorites. We don't go often, maybe on an anniversary, because it's so amazing.
Yeah, awesome. Well, and happy birthday one day early.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, very good. It sounds like you had an exciting weekend. We basically watched football on Saturday because of the playoffs, the NFL playoffs.
Who are you cheering for?
Well, I'm a 49ers fan, so my team's out. So I didn't really have any, I don't have any team that has any skin in the game other than I'm not a fan of the Seahawks, and they lost to the Rams. So I was pretty happy about that. It was nice to see Tom Brady win, and then Cleveland beating Pittsburgh was last night was pretty amazing, although I did not watch the game.
Yeah, I was actually cheering for Washington to beat Tom Brady because I'm an Alex Smith fan. I mean, that comeback that even though he didn't play in the game, I think he's 5-1 as a starter or something like that.
Yeah, he's 5-1 as a starter. Their backup quarterback played really, really well. In fact, my son and I, we were just kind of looking at each other and saying, who do we actually want to win this game? Because this guy is playing so great. What it's like the ultimate underdog story.
I was just really cheering for Washington. They have not had, great seasons, Alex Smith. I wanted him to have a chance to play in the playoffs. So that's who I was cheering for. I have been in the past a 49ers fan. I love Kansas City, and I love, their coach is a great guy. And I'm not a super huge fan of Patrick Mahomes, but I think he's a great quarterback. But I just think the world of, now I'm forgetting his name. Who's the coach of
Andy Reid?
Andy Reid. He's just such a good person and a good guy, and the people that play for him just love him. And his coaching style is one that is a great example of how to create a great team performance, and having his people perform above even, their skill levels. He's done such a great job over the years with the Eagles, and now with Kansas City. I think he's a great coach, and I respect him, and I cheer for them just for him. Plus Alex Smith used to be there, right? And
that's right.
He played for Andy Reid, and so I, that's my Utah connection.
I'm originally from the Bay Area, so I've been a lifelong 49ers fan, and they've had plenty of glory years, but this
they have. We had a lot to talk about when it came to goals, and I think we could really spend some more time on that. What do you think?
I think so. I mean, we spent a lot of time talking about how to get past the quitters day, and so that was really, really good. I really enjoyed that, and I'm looking forward to learning more about how we overcome quitters day, how we set goals that are lasting, that are not fleeting. And so I'm
great,
super excited to hear what you have to say today on the subject.
Well, did you set some New Year's resolutions, goals? Did you set some goals this year?
I purposefully did not, because I wanted to let time go a little bit, and then see where I was at. And part of that is laziness. Part of that was wanting to avoid the pressure of New Year's Day, or setting goals of the new year, saying, hey, why do I need to do this January 1? I can
so you're a little bit of a rebel.
I am a little bit of a rebel, I guess, in that sense. So, I don't want to do it on the 1st of January. Maybe I'll take stock mid-January, or
you don't have to do your strategic plan or your goal setting when everyone says you have to do them. You could say, February is the Chinese New Year,
right?
Which I just found out yesterday. We always thought that my wife and I were both the year of the snake, 1965, but I'm actually year of the dragon, because even though I was born on January 12th, 1965, now everybody knows how old I am. I'm until, I guess, January something or February, that's the year before. So I'm considered part of 1964, which is year of the dragon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know I don't remember what I am. I was born in 67, May of 67. So what does that make me?
I don't know. Do you like luxury?
I've never considered myself as a luxurious person. In fact, I would say no. And I will give you a little anecdote. I know we need to get into our topic here, but I will give you a little anecdote. So back in the 90s, I thought, luxury, that's good. Job's going well. I'm going to reward myself. I bought myself a used luxury car, not a new one, a used one. And I felt kind of self-conscious driving it around. And I realized that,
that's not your deal.
Probably not for me. And that's not a criticism of anybody else who drives a luxury car. It just, for me, it didn't feel like me. I just felt like kind of the normal person. And so I really liked that car. It was an Infiniti Q45, and had a beautiful V8 engine and
Infiniti
nice ride. But one of the original ones, like 1990 was the year of the vehicle. But I just kind of like, it just didn't fit me. I'm
Well,
more of a
that's
Honda
because you're
guy.
not you're not the pig. You're actually the goat, and you want to hear what the goat's personality is:
What's the goat's personality?
calm and gentle.
Ah,
People born in the year of the goat are generally believed to be gentle, mild-mannered, shy, stable, sympathetic, amicable, and brimming with a strong sense of kind-heartedness and justice. They have very delicate thoughts, strong creativity, and perseverance, and acquire professional skills well. Although they look gentle on the surface, they are tough on the inside, always insisting on their own opinions in their minds. They have strong inner resilience and excellent defensive instincts. Although they prefer to be in groups, they do not want to be the center of attention. They are reserved and quiet, most likely because they are spending a lot of time in their own thoughts. Goats like to spend money on fashionable things that give them the first class appearance. Although goats enjoy spending money on the finer things in life, they are not snobbish.
yeah. I don't know if that's totally correct, but that's kind of interesting, because I would consider a luxury vehicle one of the finer things in life.
Right?
And I gave that a shot, and it just wasn't for me. Not,
Yeah.
and but I do have to say, like, I'm a huge fan of sports cars. I love the way they look,
Yeah.
but then the practical side of me comes out. I'm like, well, I can't really haul anything in it, and it's really low to the ground. I just have a hard time getting in and out of it.
So that's not going to be one of your goals to have one of those things.
No, nope.
Well, you're not alone in not making resolutions, other than you might in the future, but 59% of Americans actually refuse to make resolutions. Did you know that?
I did not know that. What's the
Yeah.
reasoning?
Well, I think they just don't want to be held bound by a commitment that they know they're going to break. So that's possibly why, and so they make them infrequently. Um, why go through the trouble of setting a goal that you probably won't achieve? And then you might feel worse about yourself than you did if you did nothing. It's like, if there's no bar or there's no goal to make and you don't do it, well, then you don't feel bad about yourself. And so, if the statistics about how few Americans achieve their goals are accurate, maybe a majority of Americans have a point.
Yeah, right. Low expectations.
Right. Well, but 145 million of us, of which I'm one, do set resolutions, and they're usually for things like, we talked last time, like weight loss. I think 21.5% are usually goals about weight loss. 12, almost 13% make more money. 7.1% quit smoking. I think 6.2 say spend more time with loved ones. I think we talked about that last time. Provide more service, 5.2%. And but only 9.2% of all those 145 million people actually achieve their goals. So maybe that's the reason why 59% of us don't set goals. What do you think?
Maybe so, because 90% of us are failures at the end of the day, right? If only 9% of people are actually achieving their goals, then what does that say about the rest of us, as a general population, not doing so great?
Well, so let me ask you this then: why do so many continue the practice?
I think, and this is total conjecture here. I mean, I don't know, but off the top of my head, I would say two things. Number one, it's tradition.
Yeah,
We just have an expectation that,
which you want to buck that tradition,
yeah,
apparently.
but there is an expectation that a new year comes, and it's nice because just like we have annual performance reviews at work or whatever, it's kind of a time for us to take an inventory of ourselves and see what we want to do, to improve ourselves. So part of it's tradition, and part of it is, uh, at the end of the day, I think most of us realize that we actually can be better people, and we want to progress. We want to do better than we did before. So I think there's a natural inclination to want to be better. and
I
it
agree.
expresses itself at New Year's through resolutions.
But but you're right in the sense that what you said earlier is that, think about, if we set a goal and we don't achieve it, and there's a lot of people in society that are quite, they're driven, they're motivated, they're in many ways they're perfectionistic. There's a culture here in Utah that is one that really focuses on, pushing your children to achieve, to get into good schools. It actually causes a lot of unhappiness and high level of suicide rates because of just all the challenges. And so there's a lot of people that struggle with self-worth because they feel like they should be doing better, or they're not achieving the success that they feel like they should have. And so a lack of satisfaction could be a real issue that is causing people to say, listen, I just don't want to put that extra pressure on myself.
What
But I
about
think,
you? Did you set
well,
goals for this year?
I did, absolutely did. And I, I have some big goals around my relationship. I talked a little bit about that. I actually talked to my wife about rating our relationship. I don't want to get into that anymore. I'm not going to talk about it or expose, how that came out. But there's work for me and her to do, which is great. We also acknowledge that, in spite of all the craziness that's going on, there's some things that we're doing pretty well. So I have goals around that. I have goals around our business. I have a goal to publish a book this year, and I'm that's a big thing. I have health goals. I have goals to do some, as a family, we want to have family reunion and go to Canada. I want to climb mountains. I have a lot of things that I'm planning on doing. But today what I want to talk about is why so few of us, last time we talked about Quitter's Day, but I really believe that there's a reason why only 9+% of us achieve those goals. And I think part of it is how we actually set the goals. And, if you look at those resolutions that I was talking about, lose weight or stop smoking, what do you notice about that list that I rattled off?
Well, I think for a lot of people, goal setting is an individual exercise. Like I just
Okay.
do it myself. You mentioned though that you had set goals with your wife and you set goals with your family. And that I think is an interesting concept, which is group goal setting instead of just individual goal setting. And I'm
Right.
curious if there's any differences in the metrics, between goals that are shared versus goals that are the sole property of one individual.
Well, I think that one of the answer is there can be, or they can be part of the problem why so many people don't achieve. Many businesses don't achieve their strategic initiatives, like we talked about last time. And so those are collective goals, right? I mean, we're doing a family goal about getting out of debt. But it's not just here's the reason why I think that some of those goals don't get achieved is because of just the broad nature or focus, be healthy, or, we talked about, I want to, what do I want to become? But the goal itself is too broad, get out of debt. Well, that's where we want to go. But what is it that I get to do to make that happen? And we're not often clear about what the goal actually, what it will take to get there. And we overcomplicate it, or we don't really define what it is that needs to happen. So for example, what does self-improvement look like? How much more time are you going to spend with your loved ones? Where will that time come from? How much weight will you lose and by when? And how much time will you exercise each week? Many goals tend to focus on a massive or extreme change. And then when life gets busy and we have opposition, like we talked about last time, we quickly lose track or give in. If we go to a party and we blow our eating diet, then we're just like, well, I can't do it. And it's not fun anyway. I want to have fun. I want to enjoy my life. So as a result, those goals no longer seem sustainable. And with fatigue, our will to pursue those goals can, can falter, and we resist the change that is required, and we go back to our old habits. And that same thing happens in organizations.
One other thing, though, that I think is important when it comes to organizational goals is they are often made using a certain set of assumptions that either may be incomplete, incorrect, or may change substantially over a period of time. So sometimes, oh yeah, we're in merger and acquisition mode. We end up making an acquisition that is based on some information, and then how many times have we been involved with or known people or even just read in the news about acquisitions of organization companies that ended up being wildly overvalued?
Right.
You know, the landscape changes, and you need to make adjustments to it. I just think that sometimes that can also happen in our individual goal setting. Sometimes we set assumptions, or we make goals based on a set of assumptions that may not be entirely correct. Maybe we need to question some of those assumptions. I mean, have you noticed any of that in your own experience, either personally within your families, you're setting goals, or with clients as they're working on strategic planning?
100%. And conditions change, or as you said, you don't have the all the information. So maybe you have a health goal, and in the middle of the year you get diagnosed with some disease. Well, now all of a sudden the goal changes, right? It's not about how many hours you're working out in the gym. It's about, maybe I have a heart condition that I've got to correct, and it's getting through that. And so it's okay being it's really about being able to adjust to the new realities as things go forward, and make sure that the goal is relevant. And so I have a couple of suggestions, assuming that you make a goal that is based on accurate information, and for your organization, you individually, that you want to go forward. One of the things that I failed to mention last time, I talked about my health goal, because I want to be, overall, I want to be a healthy individual. I also want to have great relationship with my wife. And so one of the things I do is I bring those opportunities together as much as possible. Like today, instead of running, I went on our trail with my wife. Like, you go for a walk and you hold hands. And for me, the goal is just about getting out there and exercising. And what's happened is now that I'm spending more time with my wife, my speed is actually going down. And so I look at that and like, well, why is that happening? Why am I not being, maybe, it's like, if my goal was all about, how many times I'm going out there and how fast I'm going, and how great my rates are, I would be dissatisfied. But since I've matched that with another goal, which is spend time with my wife, it's not about, initially I started running up and I would meet her, and then we would walk down together. But it's more important for me to just be with her. So I hike up with her and we hike down together. But on the days that she's not there, I go hard. But as a result, my overall times are coming down, are worse than last year. But that doesn't bother me, because it's not important to me. What's important to me is being healthy and being with my wife. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Oh, it totally makes sense. And I actually think it illustrates a really important concept, which is sometimes what we want may at times contradict or compete. I, I I have this story or example that I share all the time with people. Uh, back in the 90s, when I was really heavily involved in implementing computer systems, I basically came to realization that in a for-profit institution, the only reason that you implement these things is to make more money. And generally, the systems that you implement can help you in a couple of ways. One is by making your process more efficient so you can do more in less time. And another is by gathering more information so that you can make a better business decision. You get a better picture of what's really going on in your business. Sometimes these things are contradictory, So, for example, in the motorcycle or power sports business, back in that time, a lot of things were still done on paper. And if a customer came in and needed a part and you didn't have it in stock, that I need to do a special order. Well, it would be very easy for the person at the parts counter to just write down on a piece of paper, I need to make sure I order this part. It's faster to do that than it is to look up the part number in the system and type the order in the system and get the customer's information and put it in the system if it's not already in the system, and so on and so forth. And so you get pushback from people like, hey, you're making my life harder,
The
because
process
the process is actually less efficient than if I were just
correct.
writing it on a piece of paper. But if I just write it on a piece of paper, then I don't have anything in the system to give me any information that I actually need to order this part. Or if people just start writing stuff on notes, on Post-its all over the place, then we don't know what's actually going on in the business. So you know what? You actually have to put this stuff in the system, even though it takes a little bit more time than if you just wrote it down on a piece of paper, or if you didn't say anything to anybody and just stored it in your head and said, okay, at the end of the day, I need to remember that I got to order this part for Rob, who came in and said he needed this part. This kind of stuff happens all the time. And I imagine this kind of stuff can happen all the time with goals too. Like you just mentioned, I've got these two goals. They're both important to me, but ultimately I've got a mental process that I can go through that says, you know what, I'm willing to give on this one a little bit so that I can achieve this other one and make it better.
Well, that's interesting. I think last time you brought up what Adrian used to say. It's not about having, how much time you spend sweeping, but it's actually about creating a clean floor, right? So sometimes goals can be perverse. And you brought up Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. And I just learned that there are many organizations that create goals that don't necessarily create the habits that you want. So for example, I don't know if you noticed in the game against Washington that even though the game was in hand, that Tom Brady kept passing to a certain individual. I don't know if you noticed that, even like 2-yard passes, 3-yard passes, until the very end when they got far enough and then they took a knee. Did you notice that?
Well, I don't know if I noticed it from the same vantage point or perspective that you noticed, but I noticed that early on in the game, the color commentator made a comment about a particular player and quoted Tom Brady, or paraphrased Tom Brady, saying that this player has the best hands that he's ever seen, and he catches everything. And then I noticed this player drop a number of passes. I'm like, what?
Well, this is not what I'm talking about. What I want to know is why they didn't
until he actually started catching the ball, which I thought was quite interesting. But what did you have?
Well, the question I have for you is, why didn't they just run the ball out and then run the timeout? Why did they keep passing when the strategy to win would have actually been better to run the ball and get the clock to run out faster?
I don't know. You give us the answer here.
The reason is that one of his teammates had an incentive to catch a certain number of passes in order to get a $250,000 bonus. And so in order to hit that number, the game before, I think he gave him, I can't remember, it's like 10 passes in a game. And then he had to do it again this time. And I think he got 50 receptions and he gets a bonus. Well, Tom Brady also has a kicker in his contract that if he makes so many completions, that he got like $800,000. And so it was less about, they won the game, but the focus was on on getting those individual bonuses. And I'm not sure that I'm against that, but you have to be careful to make sure that it's not about just making the pass, that it's about winning. What do you think about that?
It's very apt, right? Because the incentives are in the contract for a reason. They're in the contracts because the owners believe that if you hit these incentives, our chances of winning are better.
That's right.
So that's why the incentives are in there in the first place. They are to incentivize the player to play at their best level. And they figure that if the player is playing at the best level, then
The
they'll be
chance of
winning
winning
ball
goes up.
games, right? The chance of winning goes up. So the incentives, I think, they come from a good place, right? But you're right. If you're not careful with those incentives, you could create situations where people start to do things for themselves at the expense of the team, and then the incentive becomes a perverse incentive. And I'm guessing that ties into goal setting by making sure that we set goals that actually help us achieve victory rather than
That's right.
Pyrrhic victory, where we achieve this goal.
Ooh, I like that word, Pyrrhic. For those who are listening who are not English speakers, why don't you define Pyrrhic?
Well, since you liked it so much, maybe I'll ask you to return the favor. But basically, I know it goes back to,
it's empty.
Yeah, it's empty. It's an empty victory. It goes back to what, Greek or Roman history.
I just love that you use these great vocabulary words. It stimulates me.
I'm trying to keep up with you, Spencer.
But what's interesting is that actually Tom Brady is an example of a leader who cares about the members of his team, and so was considerate enough of this individual on the team to make sure that they had the success that he was looking out for them. And that's in a way unselfish. I'm sure he was able to bring in other members of the team to say, hey, let's do this for our teammate, because if you're willing to do that for somebody else, then they might be willing to do it for you. So I think it's also an example of great leadership. Well, we're getting a little off topic because these are fun things to talk about. Yet this idea of focusing on passes is one of the first suggestions that I make in order to overcome that 9% number of people that only achieve their goals, is simplify your resolutions. Break it down into smaller specific goals. So if you think about it, if the goal over the year for this player is to have 50 catches, then if you have 14 games, how many that you have to have on average per game, and that makes it mentally achievable, because you say, I can do that, and maybe if you catch fewer one game, you might catch more the next game. But, if we set too many intangible goals, the brain just can't go out and find the answers to a question that is too nebulous. If you can focus your brain in a direction that is clear and easy to understand, then it can figure out ways to go out and achieve it. So that's the first thing, is simplify the goal in a way that your brain can actually understand, and then can begin to problem solve on how to achieve that. That's really number one. So if I want to lose 25 pounds over the year, I can break that down into smaller goals, on a monthly basis. And but anyway, does that all make sense?
Yep, it does. Makes total sense.
So the next thing you want to do is you want to focus on behaviors to achieve the goal, not just the goal. And so focusing on those actions that it will take to catch that many passes. For example, running crisp routes and learning how to get away from the defender, or what kinds of things am I going to do to make sure I limit my calorie intake and maximize my calorie burning. Those are the actions that are going to get you to that goal that you can control, right? And so for an athlete who is a receiver, they're going to be making sure that their speed is, they're going to be practicing running with resistance, so that when they don't have that resistance, they can be as fast as possible. They're going to practice, catching with their hands. You talked about dropping balls. Well, what kinds of drills and practices can I do that can simulate the game where I can really practice getting my hands on those balls. I mean, there's those kinds of things I can do to increase my percentage of reception, assuming I'm getting good throws. And then third is regularly evaluate. And that means you got to review each week. You look at your stats. You know, if you're in sales, for example, and you have to make, so many sales, how many calls does it take? Well, that will depend on how good your closing rate is. I mean, what's your closing ratio? And you have to track that. If it's 30%, then that's going to mean, that you have to make a certain number of calls. If your closing ratio is 40%, that means you actually have to make less calls. But you got to know what those stats are so that your brain can say, okay, if I make 10 calls, I'm going to have 3 conversations. And if I have 3 conversations and I have a 33% close rate, I'm going to get one of them. That's the kind of stuff that you need to be thinking about so your brain can understand, okay, how many calls do I need to make? I need to make 50 calls today or 100 calls today to get a hold of 10 people to make 3 sales or whatever that is. You've got to know what that data is, because then you can take the action and your brain can say, okay, I have to do X, Y, and Z.
All right. You just illustrated a really fantastic example. There's more than one way to skin a cat, right?
Yeah.
So if my goal is to increase sales, in the example that you just gave, there are 2 ways that I can do that.
Yes.
Probably more than 2, but just to make it simple, there are 2 ways.
Yeah.
Either I can increase the amount of calls, so I'm growing the size of my funnel. I got more stuff coming in,
more prospecting.
So I can increase my prospecting, or I can increase my closing rate. If I'm not happy with 30%,
skill development.
If I'm not happy with 30%, then I say, okay, what happens if I go to 40%, which is increasing the tapering of this funnel.
Correct.
So it's not the size of it, but it's the taper. So I've got more coming out of the bottom end. So when I'm setting my goal, how do I know which one I should try? Or do I set myself up for failure if I try to do both, or should I do one or the other? I'll go from 30% to 40%, or I will go from 100 calls to 150 calls to achieve that same outcome.
Well, this is purely my opinion. I always believe it's better to work smarter than harder. So, I mean, if you're all about just, this is a principle that I think that Stephen Covey talked about, sharpening the saw, right? There's so many people that just go out and they're sawing the logs, and they just keep sawing and sawing and sawing, and they don't realize that if they would stop sawing for a minute and take some time to sharpen the blade, that the actual time they spent sawing that log would be diminished. They would get more done in less time. So personally, I'm somebody that says, you know what, if I can increase my skills, I can become more efficient at the touches that I have, at being more proficient at helping people to get what they need, then my closing ratio improves if I learn how to do that with greater skill. And it's not just about tactics, it's about helping people get what they need and want. And when I get good at that, it's easier for me to get that higher closing ratio. And so, that takes less calls, which means I have time to pursue other things that I want to pursue. So it's like I said, where are you going to get your time for? If you want to spend more time with your family, is that at odds with the fact that you have to make 200 calls today? I don't know. I think that's something that I would look at. I mean, for me, I would always rather become more efficient and productive with the time that I have. Now, it's good to have a work ethic and to keep driving and pushing really hard. But if I could get more with less time, that's the goal that I would focus on. That's just me personally.
But I think it's a fantastic principle. And I think it's probably, for me at least, the most important takeaway of this conversation, which is, well, all right, if my goal is to lose weight, and I typically exercise 30 minutes a day, Do I want to just keep doing the same stuff, but increase it to 45 minutes a day? Or do I want to maybe kind of change up my routine a little bit, do something that might be a little bit harder in the same 30 minutes, to achieve a better result, so
Well, what do you think?
I would probably like to keep it to 30 minutes if I could.
Yeah. Well, so for me, that's a little different, because one of the things I do is I don't go to the gym. I like to go outside, because part of the exercise, going outside in the weather, in the mountains, is cathartic for me. So not only am I exercising, but I'm getting outside. So I'm achieving. You just have to be clear about what's important to you. So for me, not only is it important to exercise, but it's important to get outside. So sometimes I end up doing a similar routine, though I go on different trails and that stuff. So that may not be as efficient for me to lose weight. Maybe I need to do Pilates.
I don't know. Well, it all depends on what your goal is, right? Because if your goal is a more holistic goal, that it's not just about burning calories, but it's also about having quality of life and being able to enjoy the outdoors and kind of clear your mind.
It clears my mind. It's good for my soul.
All right. Well, I appreciate this hour of soul food that
we're not done. Are you done? Are we done? Oh my gosh, time is going too fast.
Time flies. Yeah, we've
so just a couple more things.
All right.
Number 4, reward success, right? So when you achieve something, I think one of the things you need to do is, even little baby steps, you need to celebrate and recognize you're making progress. That's one thing. I think that there's another thing that you need to look at, and that is your behavioral tendencies. When it comes to certain goals, each behavioral profile, we've talked a lot about these over the years, can actually create imbalance. I was working with an organization, and I want to just highlight this really quickly. I was working with an organization, and I was talking to them about communication challenges that they have, because the team overall was very much skewed to a certain type of personality that was typically conflict avoidant, and they just let things build up. And on the other hand, there may be a team that spends too much time socializing and too much time talking, and they're like, well, we need to be more efficient. Well, you're working against your personality, right? And those that are conflict avoidant, they wanted to be more assertive. And so knowing the fact that they have that personality is important, because it's going to be hard for them when they start talking. They start running into me in the hallway, right? And I have something that I want to talk to them about, and they're just like, I don't have time to listen to this, but I don't want to be rude. But they need to learn how to prepare to be assertive in a way that is not confrontative. So for example, Christian, if you came to me, or I came to you, and you knew I was somebody that was very gregarious and I could steal your time, but you want to be more assertive, but that's not your personality, one of the things you might learn how to do is I come to you, hey, Christian, you got 5 minutes? And the question you might ask me is, I have 2 minutes, but if you really need 5 minutes, I can talk to you a little bit later. So learning how to take charge of the conversation without creating that conflict would really help you. But you have to know that that's part of your behavioral profile. Next, have an accountability partner that you can report to. We talked a little bit about that. I think that's really, really important. And when you have that, and you have your weekly check-ins, then you can see the progress that you're having. And I think that's really going to help people get beyond that 9% success rate to a higher success rate in achieving their goals. There. Did I do that efficiently?
I think we got it all in.
Good.
All right. Well, Spencer, as always, it's a joy to speak with you and learn from you. If listeners want to learn more about how you could help them set goals this year, whether it's personal goals, family goals, or organization goals, what's the best way for them to reach out and contact you?
Thank you, Christian. That's very nice. It's Spencer at altmleadership.com is my email address, or go to our website, Spencer. That's my email address again. Go to our website at altmleadership.com, and you can message us there. And Christian, how can people get a hold of you for the same purposes, to help them with their goals, with your experience?
Well, you can email me at cnapier@gp4.com. That's gpfour.com. You can go to the website, gp4.com. You can also look me up on LinkedIn, Christian Napier. So thank you very much, Spencer. Listeners, please like and subscribe to our podcast. Good luck with your goal setting this year, and we'll catch you again soon.